Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today I am doing my September wrap-up. So we're going to talk about the books that I read in September. In September, I didn't read a whole lot of books. I read 4 books and 3 graphic novels, which is fine. I really wasn't in the mood to read in September. I wouldn't necessarily call it a reading slump because I just didn't feel like reading. And like I was just doing other stuff. So I just didn't get as much reading done in September, but I am hoping that in October I will get more reading done. But yeah, so let's talk about the 4 books and 3 graphic novels that I read in September. So first up, I'm going to start with the graphic novels because I don't have a lot to say about them, but I read the next 3 volumes of The Girl from the Other Side by Nagabe, I think is how you say their name. So I read volume 5, volume 6, and volume 7. So this takes place in a world in which there is a curse that is passed through touch, and so the people of this world have kind of walled themselves off, so there are the insiders and the outsiders. The insiders are humans who have not been affected by the curse, and then the outsiders are the people who have been affected by the curse and are now in this like monstrous form. And we're following 2 characters. One is an outsider and one is a little girl who's one of the insiders but is now living on the outside, and this outsider is taking care of her. And there are some like mysterious things about why she is not being affected by the curse and she is able to live on the outside without being turned into an outsider. So that's the premise of this, and I do enjoy this series. It's very, I feel like it's very quiet and sweet, and you know, kind of, it's a little bit dark, a little bit sad sometimes, but generally kind of a sweet story about this outsider taking care of this little girl and their relationship, and it's just very cute. Yeah, so I read the next 3 volumes and I enjoyed them. Then the first book that I finished in September was Den of Wolves by Juliet Marillier. This was a reread for me. This is the 3rd book in the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy, and I actually read like half of this in August and then finished it in September, so didn't even read this complete book this month, but I finished it in September. And this series is following Blackthorn and Grimm. The 2 of them in the beginning of the series are in prison, and then one day one of the fair folk shows up and offers Blackthorn the opportunity to escape from prison, but she has to follow his rules for 7 years, and she agrees to take the deal. And so she has to follow his rules, which involve like living in a specific place in a forest, and offering help to anybody who asks her for help for the next 7 years. And Grimm also manages to escape and travels with Blackthorn, and so the 2 of them end up living in the forest together, and Blackthorn is a healer and a wise woman, and so they are helping people. And in each book there is also kind of a mystery that they're working on and helping someone with, and then there's also a larger like overarching plot throughout the story that's sort of in the background. So in this one, of course, we continue to follow the perspectives of Blackthorn and Grimm, and then we also get the perspective of a girl named Kara who lives nearby in a place called Wolf Glen. She is the daughter of a local nobleman, but Wolf Glen is very mysterious, and part of that is kind of Kara's origin and what has happened to her mother, because her mother died and her father refuses to talk about it, and there's a lot of like, Kara doesn't really know a lot about her mother and Wolf Glen itself, but she is very connected to the place, the land, the trees of the forest. And then one day a man shows up out of nowhere, and he looks like he has been like living in the wild for a very long time, and Kara's father sends her away and then employs this man to build a special maybe magical house for him. And so Kara is trying to figure out like why her father has sent her away, kind of the history of Wolf Glen and what happened to her mother, who this mysterious man is, why is he building this house, and is really trying to just find out more about her family and their history. And of course, Blackthorn and Grimm get sucked into this and have to help her, you know, find out these mysteries. And this one I had a really fun time rereading this because the first time I read this book, this was my least favorite one in the trilogy, and now that I've reread it, it is, I'm not sure if it's my favorite or my second favorite in the trilogy, but I really liked it a lot more this time. I feel like every time I reread these books, or any of Juliet Marillier's books, my like ranking of the books changes, but I really loved this one. I really liked Kara and her character, and I also really liked that in this one, like in the Blackthorn and Grimm trilogy, we always get lots of, you know, nature vibes of being out in the forest because they live in the forest, and it's a Juliet Marillier book, so we always get like beautiful nature descriptions and all of that. But in this one, with Kara's perspective, we specifically get someone who has this like almost magical connection to the land and the trees, and she like talks to trees and she feels like they are her friends, and so you get like extra nature vibes from this one, which I really loved. I also really liked this conclusion to the trilogy, and especially the way that it wrapped up kind of that overarching plot that had been kind of in the background throughout the series. Like reading this, I knew how it ended, and I also knew how certain like relationship dynamics between different characters ended, but getting to like see it unfold again, I really enjoyed it, and like I was just very like satisfied, and it made just my heart happy to see the way that this series ended. So I had a really fun time rereading this. Next, I listened to the audiobook of The Last True Poets of the Sea by Julia Drake. This is a YA contemporary book that is like sort of a retelling of Twelfth Night, but also it is a retelling of Twelfth Night but with a female-female romance in it. And it takes place in a small town, I think in Maine, where our main character has gone to live for the summer and is volunteering at a local aquarium, and then she makes friends with some of the local kids who live there, and that kind of creates the Twelfth Night scenario. But another reason that she is in this town for the summer is partially because she has family there, because her family actually founded this town, but also because recently her brother had attempted suicide, and while he is recovering that, she needed something to do for the summer and somewhere to go, and so her parents sent her to live with her family that lives in this town in Maine. And while she is there, she also wants to kind of become a better person. She feels like she hasn't been the best person. So I decided to pick this one up for a few reasons. There are some, you know, shallow reasons being I like the title and it has a beautiful cover, but also I have heard people just say great things about it, and I don't read a lot of YA contemporary, but I do like Shakespeare retellings sometimes, so I was like, you know, we'll see if that balances out. And I did enjoy this. I enjoyed the Shakespeare retelling aspects of it. I have found that as time has passed, it's kind of like faded in my memory. It's not a story or characters that have really like stuck with me. I do think that it's very touching, and I do think it's like well done, but it didn't quite like hit me in the feels the way I was expecting or hoping that it would. So I gave it 4 stars because I did think it was really good. Next, I read Nightshine by Tessa Gratton. This is her new YA fantasy that just came out in September. It was originally going to be a standalone, but since it came out, it's been announced that there's actually going to be another book in this series that is following a side character in this book. But in this, we are following a girl named Nothing who lives in the palace and is friends with the prince, and just kind of like keeps to the shadows, keeps to herself, doesn't want to be noticed, and kind of lives her life as if she does not exist. And then the prince has gone traveling over the summer with his bodyguard and then disappears and does not come back. So Nothing has to find out what happened to him. And she and the prince's bodyguard are the only ones who think that they might know where he is, and they think that he has been taken by the sorceress who eats girls. And so they set out to go and save him, and then find out all kinds of other things, not just about the prince, but also about Nothing and her past as well. So This was one of my most anticipated releases of the year because I love Tessa Gratton. And I had fun reading this. This is not my favorite thing that I have read from her, but I did really enjoy it. I feel like this book had a very distinct like aesthetic and atmosphere to it that felt very different from the other books that I have read from her. And it had, I feel like this one was a little more whimsical than some of the other books that I have read from Tessa Gratton. So that was really interesting to find one that had a very different tone. So this book was originally pitched as like a dark queer Howl's Moving Castle, and I can definitely see the connection to Howl's Moving Castle. It is definitely darker and not as like wholesome and cute, but it has some similarities in like the vibe to it, and it also has a lot of spirits and demons and like house spirits or house demons that are connected to the houses, and that kind of remind me of like Calcifer in some ways. So there are definitely elements that I can see that comparison. I enjoyed the characters in this. I was not super invested in the characters in this book, but I think that that's partially because of the way that it's written. So this is a book that very clearly has like larger themes to it, and I think that the story very much stayed on a thematic level and didn't get as deep into the individual characters, and so I really enjoyed the larger thematic elements of the story. But speaking of the themes, this book does talk a lot about gender, especially one of the characters in this is either non-binary or gender fluid, and so it has a lot of stuff about gender and being not restricted by a binary and feeling like you're kind of in between and not just one or the other. Tessa Gratton is non-binary and wrote a article talking about like her experience being non-binary and how that influenced this story, which was really interesting, which if I can find that article again, I'll link it below if you're interested in reading it. So this definitely had a lot of themes around gender, and then those themes around, you know, feeling kind of in between or not exactly one or the other were then expanded to other aspects of life as well, because then we have other characters like Nothing who feels like there are other parts of herself that are not just one or the other, and she feels like she kind of lives in this in-between space. And this talks about how being not just one thing or the other and being in this space between gives you power. Like literally in this book you can get like magical power by not being constrained by binaries and living in that space. It also has a lot of themes around being able to define yourself however you see fit and being able to make your own choices about who you are, and also allowing other people to make their own choices and loving them in a way that gives them freedom to be themselves and to make their own choices. So I really loved all of the themes that this had, and I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads. I wasn't quite sure if it was going to be a 3.5 or a 4-star, but it was somewhere around there, and I really enjoyed it. And then the last book that I read in September was The Memory Police by Yoko Ogawa, and this is a standalone speculative dystopian book, which I actually had started a couple of months ago. I read the first like 50 pages of this and I was enjoying it, but I wasn't like in the mood for it then, and then I decided to pick it back up in September, and I actually listened to it as an audiobook, and I really liked the audiobook, and if you like audiobooks, would highly recommend it as an audiobook because I thought it was really good. This is set on an island that is unnamed. The island is not named. Almost none of the characters in this have names. They're just referred to as the old man, or there's one character who's just referred to as R. And on this island, memories are disappearing. So there is some governing body that is disappearing memories, and when that memory disappears, then people will just destroy whatever thing it is. So if it's like, you know, if spoons disappeared, then they would just destroy all of their spoons because they would no longer have the ability to remember like what is the use of this object. If it's an object that's connected to like memories or feelings, all of those memories and feelings connected to the object would have disappeared. It no longer has any purpose or meaning in their lives, and so they just get rid of it. And then there are people who are the memory police who of course go around enforcing all of this. But we find out that there are a few people in this world who are able to retain their memories, and so they have to hide themselves because they are being tracked down by the memory police. Our main character in this is not one of those people. She does forget things as they are taken by the memory police. But her mother was one of the people who could remember things, and then she finds out that someone she knows is also able to remember things, and so she decides to help him and hide him from the memory police. And over the course of the book, we see various memories disappear and how it affects people's lives, and then how eventually they just adapt to it. And then also in this, so our main character is an author and she writes fiction. And so there's a book that she is working on. And throughout this, we get snippets of the book that she is writing and little scenes from that. And we get to see how her experiences and what she's doing starts to kind of influence the direction her story is going and the themes that she's incorporating into the story that she's writing. So I really enjoyed this book. I think that there are some aspects of it that I just kind of had to accept, like, we're not going to know this. Like, this isn't a book that explains a lot to you. There are a lot of things we don't know. Like, we don't know like who even is this like governing body beyond the memory police, but like who's disappearing memories. We don't really know why memories are disappearing, like what is the purpose or the goal for this. We don't know anything about the mechanism of how these memories are disappearing, so there's a lot of unknowns, but that's really not the point of this. The point is much more about the effect that it has on everyday people to lose these memories. So that's really where the focus is. So there has to be a certain amount of just accepting the unknown going into this and focusing on what the book chooses to focus on, which are just the small memories of everyday people's lives. And so we're just watching as these memories disappear and seeing how these small, insignificant seeming memories make up who we are and how we know our own existence and our world. And as these memories slowly disappear, their existence is just consumed by the empty spaces left in their lives. This book is kind of quiet. It has this very quiet, measured urgency to it. It's a really interesting tone that I feel like I can't really compare to anything else. And so yeah, it's a very like quiet and in many ways very sad dystopian. But I really enjoyed this and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I had one DNF this month, which was a memory called Empire by Arkady Martine. And then I have a few books that I am currently reading. So one is I'm listening to the audiobook of Age of Myth by Michael J. Sullivan. I am also reading Conjure Women by Afia Atakara, which I think I was mispronouncing her name before. I saw some videos where she introduced herself and I believe she pronounces it Afia Atakara, not Afia Atakora. So sorry I was mispronouncing that. And then I am also reading The Forgotten Kingdom by Signe Pike. So those are all of the books that I completed in September and the books that I am currently reading. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye!